Hi guys, this is Mr. Nell speaking here. Sorry for not being able to do a live video feed on this particular program for the grade 10s, but I have taken the time to make my own recording and post it to all of you. I will give the relevant educators this program to distribute amongst you all so that you can go and practice subroutines. Thank you again for downloading this video and using me as a resource. Today we are going to talk about subroutines. The first question in our mind is, what is a subroutine? In all programming languages, they do have some pieces of code that was pre-written in that programming language. These pieces of code help us a lot to do our everyday coding, if you can say it like that. Small pieces of code that help us maybe to add values, to work out averages, to work out the power of a value, to convert values. There are many such subroutines that exist in all programming languages. The ones that we are focusing on in Delphi are called functions and procedures. Now we ask, where do we find these subroutines? Where does it come from? Well, the developers of Delphi, like I said, have created almost like a library of subroutines or subprograms that we can use over and over and over again in all our programs that we code. These subprograms are already preloaded when we start a new VCL form application. Let's look at where do we find this. If you look at your code editor, you will see, and most probably you haven't even really noticed, the users section. In here are all the units, if you can call it like that, of small subroutines that automatically gets loaded when you start a new program. The most common one that we use and that is already there is system utilities, sysutils, as you can see there. Okay, that one contains most of the subprograms that we use every time. We will today also identify some of the subprograms that you have been working with and didn't realize it was a subprogram. Let's go back to the program. I have created again a summary program to help understand subroutines much better. But before we get started, I want to lay down a few rules. Today we are going to focus on functions. What do we need to know about functions? Firstly, we need to know that any function that we use only delivers one result, or we can say one answer. Okay? The other is how we call the function. It's very important how we call the function. If we don't call it properly, it will not work properly. And what do we give to the function to do its work properly, to do its process properly? Each function that we also use has a unique name. When we code our own functions, and that you will learn later on, we can't use the same names that have already been used in Delphi. We have to create brand new names, otherwise there's going to be a conflict. Okay. Now, also before I show you the code, I want to show you something fancy. Maybe you have seen it, maybe you have not. But it is a component that I use quite often to help with my summaries. And it's called a page control. Currently, so it's a component that you can choose here. Under, let me see, there it is, a page control component. I drag it in and I expanded it the size of my working area of my form. Then I can right click on my page control and select new page. Immediately what you could see is a new page was created. Each page that is created has its own tab, like you see here on top. You can add as many tabs as you like. I've already created 4 tabs for my 4 different views inside my single program. So without further ado, I am going to delete this page so it doesn't create any issues, but it's a very awesome component to use. Okay, when coding it as well, let me show you when I run my program. You will not see this. Can you see when I run my program that you don't see those tabs on top, and that I've created buttons to move to those different tabs? Let me show you. If I go back to my introduction screen or page, you will see the tabs in there. In my form create, I have coded it to hide the tabs. To do that, I gave my tabs, each of my tabs, a name, and I called it tab visible property. This tab visible property is a Boolean value. So as you can see, I changed it to double dot equals to false. I did the same for my math, my other, and my string tabs. And then one of the easiest codes to remember is when I want to display a specific tab, I just call upon the tab's name and its .show property and a semicolon. Let's go back to the design. So when my program starts, I want to hide all these tabs. For each of these buttons, as you can see here, I've coded them to show the specific tab I want to work with, helping me to navigate, to force the user to navigate my program in a certain way. Now, let's go see what do I have in my string functions tab. Okay, I've tried to put the different functions in categories so it's easier for you to study and to learn the code as well. Okay, so you've got your string functions, you've got your math functions that you can use, and I've just added some extra other functions, something to play around with, and that makes your program also look nifty. In our string functions, these are all functions that we use when we type in any form of text. Can be a word, can be a letter, can be a sentence, anything like that. Let's have a look. Some of the functions that we are going to look at now is uppercase, length, pause for position, and copy. Let's start with uppercase. So the whole purpose of uppercase is to take any text that I type in my edit, or whichever component you're using, even an input box, and it capitalizes each letter. This helps us with many cases where we have to do validation, where the user most probably can type in a small letter, but it needs to check for a capital letter. You can then uppercase the letters, or upcase. That is something that you will find in your chapter 3 of your Delphi textbook. Let's have a look how I call the uppercase. I have created a variable called uppercase text. I then went, I have another string variable called stext, but I made that global. And I assigned the edit content to stext. I then went further, called my new variable UCText for uppercase text, and I called the uppercase function. Now, any function has to be or has to form part of a code structure. You cannot just call the function as is in code. For instance, typing in uppercase brackets stext. You have to assign it to a variable or to a component. As you can see, my variable uppercase text, I've called the uppercase function, and then there are a set of brackets. Inside the brackets I have to put a string variable in there to help the uppercase do its process. Without that brackets and the string variable inside, it will not be able to work. When you call a function like I've done here, the function executes. Okay? All functions need to be assigned to a variable and or a component. I then called my edit, and I am displaying the result of this uppercase. Let's have a look at how it works. I'm going to type in a sentence. I like doing IT. As you can see in my sentence, I have some letters that are already capitalized, but then what about the rest, like and doing? Let's see what happens. It capitalizes everything. So even if there are letters that are already capitalized, it will keep it like that. But all other lowercase letters will then be capitalized. Okay, I hope you guys understand this. Let's go back to the code. Let's try and see what the length does. The length function is used to determine how many characters there are in a given string. The result is a number, an integer number. The length must receive a string variable, and then it will produce an integer answer. Let's have a look at how the code is typed. I created a variable called iTextLength to use to get the answer. Again, I use stext, my global variable, to assign to the edit that I'm using to type in the text. I then call my variable iTextLength, and I assign it to the length of stext. Again, can you see now how we call a function? It's always part of a syntax. Change to double dot equals length. Alright, and then I just used my edit, another edit basically, to display a proper message and then the answer. Let's test this out. I'm going to type in here I like doing IT, and when I click on length, it will say the length of the text entered is 15. Okay, but let's count the amount of characters. If I look at I, that's 1. Like, that is 4 characters, so 1 plus 4 is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 characters. So why does the length show 15? One thing you should know, if you did not know, is that spaces are also considered as characters, as text. So that's why if you count the spaces with the characters that you see, it will add up to 15 in this particular example. So that is what the length does. It counts the characters in a given text, including the spaces. Alright, I hope that makes sense. Let's go over to the pos function. The pos function is short for position. You can type in a sentence and then you can find the position of a given letter or word, and it will give you a number answer, an integer answer. Before I do this, I just want to make it very clear that when you use the pos, let's see the code. There we go. You have 2 values that you type in the brackets. Firstly, both of them are string. If you want to manually, like through code, search for a character or a word, it must be between single quotes. So let me give you an example. Let's say I'm looking for the letter A in S text. Then I will type it with quotes. Okay, I hope you guys understand that. So the pos has 2 values that it needs to receive to do its job properly. The first is what character or word you are searching for. The comma separates then the next value that the pos function has received, and that is the string that I need to look for that specific character. In this case, it is text. Let me change this back. Alright. If you are, I'm going to show you now an example and then I'll explain further. Oh, let me just change it. Okay. Now I'm asking, using an input box, what type of word or character am I looking for? So let's look at the sentence I've typed in. And I want to find the letter K. There it tells me the position value of the word or character is in 5. So let's see. 1, including the space, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's where the letter K is. The one thing that could sound a bit confusing is, what if we find multiple places where a character is used? Okay, so like for instance, the I is found 4 times in this sentence. Let's see if it is case sensitive. I'm going to find the position of I, and let's see. It shows position 4. So it is case sensitive. There's I, the small letter I, in position 4. If I do, and you will see it won't show that second I. Okay. So the way the position works is where it finds a hit, we can call it like that. When it finds a hit, when it finds a match, it stops there. It doesn't continue going through the whole sentence or the whole string to count how many of that characters are there, or show by all the characters' positions that are a match. It stops at the first one and displays only that. If you want to continue finding out how many there are of the same character, then there's a bigger process that comes to play where you need to copy, pause and delete the string. But we're not going to go there now. I hope that you understand what I've just mentioned now. Okay, let's go on. So uppercase looks like this. The length does that. Works out how many characters there are in the string. And the position, the pause, finds a character for me. One thing before I continue, let's say I want to look for a word, the position of a word in a string. Let me do an example. Let's do like. Okay? Or let's go on to doing. Sorry. Doing. It finds the first character of the word and shows its position. So we can count I is 1, space is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the word doing starts at position 8. Okay, so it's not just a character that you can search for, you can search for a word, but it will give you the starting position of, the starting position of that word in that sentence. I hope that clears up everything for you regarding the pause. Let's move on to the copy function. This one is a little bit more advanced, and I've tried to simplify it as much as I can. So let's first have a look at the code, and then we will run the program and test it out. The copy works like this. Let me just put a space so that you guys can just see the copy by itself. The copy function has 3 values that it needs to receive to do its process properly. Firstly, we say that the copy needs to have the main string that it's copying from. It needs to know what string it is copying from. In this case, it is text again. Then the other 2 values that follow must be integer values. For that I have used a to-spin edit, and I've assigned their values to I start position and I how many. I've used those words because I need you to understand this very, very clearly. When I use the copy function, I firstly have to tell it from which string I am copying from. This is not a delete or a cut. Its purpose is to copy from an existing text. It doesn't cut out of it. Followed by from which position in that string do I want to start copying from. And the second integer value is how many characters from the starting position am I copying? Many people make the mistake and think that you have to give the end value, position value of where it must stop copying, or where it must stop copying. But that's not how we should think, because then we're going to make a mistake. So let's test this out. Alright, so let's say I want to grab the word like, or let's say IT, out of this string. The starting position is, I think, 14. And how many characters do I want to copy from the starting position? 2. The result is IT. Let's do another word. Let's use like. What is the starting position of like? It is 3. How many characters from that starting position do I want to copy? So I have to count how many letters there are. It looks like 4. The answer is the word like. So it's very important how we read the copy function, how we use it. If we start typing and we don't know what each value inside the brackets are for, then we're going to make crucial mistakes and lose marks in our tests. So let's go back again to the code. I firstly have to mention that from what string am I copying from, followed by the starting position, which is integer, that I want to start copying from. And then lastly, how many characters from that starting position do I want to copy, and not the end position of the string that I want to copy from. So get that out of your heads. And then you have a successful copy. Alright. I hope that cleared up everything for you regarding string functions. Let's go over to the math functions. Here again, I've tried to summarize everything regarding maths. In here, in this edit, I am going to use, I can type in any number in this edit. It can be whole numbers, integers, or it can be real numbers. That's why we use an edit. As you know, and I hope you know, that spin edits can only use and work with integer values. That's why I haven't used it here. Let's see, what does frac do for us? Before I show you the code, let me explain. Frac is a short name for fraction. If I have a number with a decimal value, a decimal point and then decimal values after that, it will only extract the decimal values after the decimal point and display that, and disregard the whole number, the integer part of the number being used. Let's have a look at the code. I've used a variable r fraction to work out the answer. I've used a global variable r num to convert whatever number I've typed in the edit to a real value, string to float. This is another function that we are using. the R fraction, my local variable. I'm going to call the frac function, and inside the brackets I'm going to put in the value, the variable that contains the value that I've typed in the edit, and then displaying the answer using a show message. Let's test this out and see. So I'm going to type in a value 14.56. The fraction goes and it only displays the fraction amount and throws away the 14 that I've typed in. That's the purpose of fraction. Trunc, on the other hand, is the opposite of fraction. It chops off the decimal point and all the values that follow after that, and only displays the whole number part of this value that I've typed in. So let's have a look at the answer. 14. Let's look at the code. There's the code. So I created a variable. This time I've created an integer variable. This is because the trunc function can receive a real value, but it delivers a integer answer because it chops off the decimal point and the values that follow after that. So then I went and I displayed my answer. I truncate and doing an int to string conversion. Okay, let's have a look at the other functions that are on there. There's absolute, round, round to, and square root. Absolute goes and takes any value that you type in, negative or positive, and it just makes it a positive. So if I have a positive value, it stays unchanged. If I have a negative value, it will make it positive. The absolute can be used for integer and real variables. Let's have a look at how it works. So I'm going to type in a value minus 23.74, for instance. Now let's add some few characters more. An absolute will go and just make it positive. The round function does what it says. It rounds off the value. So it looks at the decimal part and rounds it off. So I'm just going to type in a positive value in here now, like 20.6. And when I click on round, it will round it up to 21. But I want to show you something interesting. If I make this 20.5, you guys know 5 is smack bang in the middle of this value. So when we click on round, we normally will round it up to 21. But look what happens when I click on round now. It rounds it down to 20. The reason for this is that Delphi looks at the integer part of the value and looks if it is an even or uneven number. If it is an even number, it will round down to an even number. If it is an uneven number, it will round it up to an even number. Let's do an example. If I change this to 21.5, it rounds it up to 22, which is an even number. This only applies when you have a 0.5. But if I have a 0.4, it will round it down. If I have a 0.6 or 7, it will round it up, disregarding if it's even or uneven. It only applies when there's a 0.5 involved. It will round it to the nearest even number. I hope that was clear to you guys. Then we get to the, or let me first show you the round code. I've created a integer variable called iRoundValue. I received the real number variable and I added it into the round, and then displaying the answer, which is integer. I hope that is clear. Let's go over to the next one, which is round 2. Now this is a bit confusing, but I'm going to show you now a few examples of how it works. The round 2 is not where you type in a decimal value and it will, and you say now, okay, round it to the nearest 2 or 1 decimal. That is confusing. That is what makes it confusing, because that's what you think. But it doesn't work like that. So let me first show you the code, and then we're going to do some practical examples so that you can see. I've created two variables, round value and round answer. So I'm taking the number from the edit, okay, converting it. That's my global variable rnum. Then I'm asking for a second value, okay, and then I'm calling the round2 function where there's two values in there. The number that I'm going to check, and then the rounded value that I've manually typed in using the input box. Now have a look at how it works. Very weird actually. So I'm going to type in a value 16.254. Now I click on round 2. It says okay, rounded 2. Now look here, 0 is going to display us a value. Look at this. It's showing me 16. Let's just stop here and have a look. With the round 2, I am basically displaying the value of the number that I've typed in. Okay, so we look at the decimal point, and it starts to the left of it at 0. And then if I type in the round 2, if I type in 1, it will show me the 10. If I go in the negative, it will show me the fractions. Let's see what happens. So if I say 1, look here, shows me 20. It rounded it up. Okay? But look at this. If I say negative 2, or let's say negative 1, it shows me 0.3. So it took that 5.4 and it rounded it up to a 0.3. If I put in negative 2, it will now display two decimal values, including now the whole number, and looking at, does the 4 round it up or round it down to 25 or 26? In this case 25. If I say negative 3, I think you know what will happen. It shows us the whole value. But what if I say a plus 3? What will the answer be? Because we know from the decimal point we work towards the left, it starts at 0, then 1, 2, and 3. Shows us 0. Okay, so depending on that second value that I use my round to, it will show you the value as you want it to. -2, -3, +0. Well, is 0 can't be positive or negative, no, but 0 and then a +1, and it will, if you just want to display that the tens, it will consider that second, the first value, and see if it's greater than or smaller than, and then round it up or round it down. I hope this round 2 clarifies for you a few things, but this is something that you need to practice and play around with. Let's go over to the next. I think square and square root is quite easy for you, that you use in maths constantly. Let's go to square. Square, quite easy. You type in a value and it gives you the square value, to the power of 2 of that value. You can use real values or integer values. This is how you call the square. SQR, in brackets, the variable, integer or real, that you want to work out the square of. The square root is obviously the opposite, and they are called the square root. So the only difference in square and square root is literally the letter T. SQR for square, SQRT for square root. I think that is quite easy. Let's run and have a look quickly. If I type in a value, 5, what is the square of that? You're correct, 25. Okay. So if I type in 25 in here, we know that the square root of 25 should be 5. There you see it. Awesome. I hope you guys so far understood everything that I've done. Let's go over to the last two. Random range and power. What I want to tell you here before we use these two values is that in the beginning, if you heard me properly, in the users, I said the system utils or system utilities has most of these functions coming from it. But there are cases where when we do maths, that those math functions that we use are not part of the sysutils. So I went and I had to add. Now I'm sorry to show you this, okay, because I've got a different version of Delphi. So with you guys, you don't need to type in system.math. You will only type in math. If you have the same version of Delphi as I have, I've got 10.2. It will add the system in front and then the .math. But for our purposes, I'm just telling you that I am calling the math unit that contains extra math functions to use. If I don't call that math function, Delphi won't recognize the functions that you are typing, and it will most probably, when you run it, give you an error. So I would as a precaution, when I know I'm doing maths and some difficult maths, I will always add in the users, I'll call the math unit that contains the extra math functions that I need to do my fancy maths equations. Okay. Random range is one of them. ABS, and power. Okay, how does random range work? Quite simple. You put in a starting value where it must start to randomize, and an end value, which is normally a higher number. So between the starting and the end value, it will randomize a number. Let's have a look at the code. I tried to make it simple and use three variables, quite descriptive: I low value and I high value, and then the random value, the answer. With I low value, I've done and look carefully, I'm actually using two functions within one another. Hopefully you know already by now that the input box is always string. But because I'm typing in a number and I want to use the number, I am converting the input box from a string to an integer to be compatible with the variable I low value. I did exactly the same for the high value. And then let's have a look at the random value. Okay, the random value, let me just make a space again so that you guys can see the code. To do the random value, I'm calling the random range function, and I'm starting off with the starting value, then followed by a comma, and then the high value. That will then randomize a value for me between the two values that I've entered, and then display the answer. Let's have a look. So let's make it simple. I wanted to start randomizing between 1 and 10. And it gives me the value 7. Let's increase the value. I want to start at, let's say, 100, and it must end at 999. Now remember, this will include those values as well that I've typed in, and randomizes a value between the two, 131. Okay, I think it's quite simple. I think you guys understand. Let's go over to our last one, and this is power. Power, you've got your base value and then your exponent. So you can say 10 to the power of 2. Let's have a look. 10 is the base number, and 2 is my exponent. That will give me the answer 100, which is 100% correct. Let's have a look at how I type the code for the power. Okay, let me just minimize that, and that, so that you guys can only see this code. Alright, I'm just going to do this again so that we can see properly. Firstly, I created 3 local variables: the base number, the exponent, and then the variable or power answer that will obviously have the answer. I used input boxes again, as you can see. The R number and the exponent, they both can be real values when using the power. So it doesn't need to be whole numbers. You can say a half exponent, so it's 0.5, or you can say 1.3 exponent. Okay, you can use real values in here and it will give you the answer. So then when you call the power, you first give it the base value followed by the exponent value, and it will work out the answer for you. I hope this is quite clear. Okay, but this is something you need to practice again. Okay, so I think I've covered most of this. Now there are a few activities in your textbook in chapter 3 which you can go and apply all these different functions that I've showed you today. Now let's go to our last tab on our Subroutines summary program. And this one I particularly like a lot to show the learners because they enjoy seeing what I do here. I'm going to show you how we can display our system's time and also the running time and current time. Oh, I made a spelling mistake there. Sorry for that. And then also our system date. Now let's see how this works. Again, this is a function that we can use. So what I've done here is, I'll explain this code for you just now, is I've called the label its caption property, and then I've called the function called time to string, and in brackets time. Okay, it's already predefined in Delphi. You just put in time in there, and it will show you the current or the time that you press that button. So it's not something that continues changing. It just shows you at that moment when you press that button what was the time and displays that. That's why I call it the timestamp. Let's go have a look. I'm going to run my program, go to others and click on timestamp. There we go. Oh, look how late that is. Don't worry guys, I'm still awake. So you can see it doesn't change. That is the time I used to press the button. So it stays like that. But I want to show you a new awesome component on our Delphi program, and you must probably have seen it and I wondered, what the hell is that, sir? Okay, so this is a timer component, but it's not a component that you see when you run the program. It's like running in the background, it's hidden. Okay, this little awesome component can be used as another form of a loop as well. You guys have must probably used loops as well, né? A for loop and a while loop and a repeat until. Now it's just a different type of loop where it literally pulses in seconds. It processes every second. Okay? So I've added this component to my form. You guys can do it too. Most probably it will look a little bit different perhaps on your Delphi programs because I'm running a different version of Delphi here. And I have to use this component to be able to display the current time. Okay, and this current time is a continuous time. Okay. So in order for me to use this component properly, I have to enable it. So what do I mean by this? This timer component has a property called enabled, and it is a Boolean value. So I have to make it true to execute, to make this timer work. And then I have to type in inside the timer component. I'm calling upon this label, this current time label, and I'm typing exactly the same code as what I've done with the timestamp, but I do it inside the timer. And because this timer is enabled, it will constantly update the label in the current time. With the timestamp, you saw I made the timer enabled false, so that I can only get that current time or that timestamp of when I press the button. If this was still enabled, it would basically continue. So let's have a look. In my current time, look there, I've only called the enabled property of the timer and I made it true. But in my timer component, I've added the label, caption, and I called the time to string time function. This one will enable to show the current time, second by second. There's my timestamp. Here's my current time. Look how it changes. Isn't that awesome? I know you like this. Now you're going to put in all your programs a little timer, ne? I can just see it happening. Okay. And the same here with a good date. If I click on date, it's going to show me the current date. Alright. Now this is just as simple as the timestamp. Let's have a look at the current date. I'm calling upon the label and I'm calling the date to string function and in brackets date. That will show me the current date. Okay guys, I really hope you enjoyed this lesson and that it was quite informative and that you've learned a few new things. I'm going to give the skeleton of this program to all the educators, so I'm not going to just give you the code as is. I want you to go and fill in all the code for the different buttons. But you don't need to worry. I will give you a copy of the code itself, but not the full program. Okay, so that you can do some referencing and see if you made a mistake, where you went wrong. But I want you to practice this, the string functions, the math functions, and then the other functions that are quite awesome. Okay, guys, it was a pleasure doing this video for you, and again I apologize for not being able to do a live stream as I had some technical issues. Alright, but you guys must have a wonderful day, and I'll chat to you guys soon on another video. Keep well. Cheers. Bye.